France against the Springboks this weekend, folks. This one on paper looks to be potentially the game of the weekend. Two of the best teams in the world. South Africa, number one on the world, just won the Rugby Championship. They knocked out France on their way to a World Cup in France only a couple of years ago. And the French, Six Nations champions, although they did suffer a few losses down here in New Zealand with a bit of an experimental lineup a few months ago. But yeah, this just feels like there's a bit of edge, a bit of spice about it. I am very much looking forward to it. We will go through some of the lineups which have been named, the changes, the recent history, predictions, stats, and all that stuff. You guys can let us know your thoughts. Just quietly, the predictions are very, very tight. Very, very tight. It is unfortunate that we are missing a few big gun players. This is kind of always the way with rugby. There's always somebody out injured, but both sides seem to be missing quite a few props. Like the French have got no Antonio, no Tatafu, so tight head is looking a little bit lighter. Cyril Baille is still getting some rugby under his belt. For South Africa, Ox got injured in the last game. There's still no Malherbe. He's been out for ages. Jan-Hendrik Wessels is banned. So both sides are getting a little bit of a test of their depth in terms of the front rowers. But let's have a look at this French side. They have got Erdocio and Montagne as their props, who started in that last game in Hamilton down here in New Zealand. So that's at least one of the benefits of France sending a changed side away in July, as they do get to build up a bit of international experience in the likes of these two guys. So hopefully they will be better for that experience. Marchand, who didn't travel on that tour, is also back at hooker. There's a debutant Cramont on the bench though, because remember, usual Toulouse pair of Marchand and Malvaca has been disrupted, with Malvaca still being out injured as well. Flament and Meafou, two guys who again didn't travel to New Zealand but were a Six Nations pairing, are back. They are a hell of a pairing in that French second row. Flament is their main liner operator, one of the most skilled locks in world rugby, and Meafou is a big lump of a human, so him and Etzebeth potentially going head-to-head at some moments could be worth the price of admission. Jelonch, Boudehent, and Guillard is a little bit of a surprising back row because there's no Aldrit. And he's not injured, he's just seemingly rotated out of the squad. I don't think Francois Cros has had a lot of rugby either. I feel like they will miss the carries and the tackles from Aldrit, and they will miss the tackles and the ruck work from Kroos in particular. I mean, Aldrit's good at the ruck time as well. Aldrit is a massive miss. I mean, Guillard is a hell of a player. He stood out in the Six Nations. He stood out on the tour to New Zealand as well. But Aldrit is some big shoes to fill. Jelonch is a great bit of jack-of-all-trades player, and Boudehent proved himself to be something of a good kind of power forward as well, who can also, you know, fill it in multiple positions if needs be. With no Dupont being injured as well, Garrec gets the start at 9. He was the leading guy to run the show down here in New Zealand as well, so it was pleasing to see that guy get some game time under his belt. The regular Luku is on the bench for this one. Apparently he's just coming back from injury, so potentially that left the door a little wider open for Garrec to be the first choice guy at 9, and then Ntamack is back in at 10 after not touring New Zealand as well. So it's a pretty sexy looking 9-10 combo, and so is the South African one. So in terms of like seeing some playmakers do their thing, You've got some very, very talented players on display this weekend. Midfielder Fickou and Barassi. So Fickou is captain for this one. He was on that tour to New Zealand as well. Remember, he was a bit limited in terms of his Six Nations appearances this year. But Moefana is out injured, so Fickou is able to keep that spot. And with no Dupont, no Aldrit, he is the captain. And the back three, it's all about that man, Louis Bielle-Biarrey, at least from the Six Nations. The guy scored like 8 tries. His ability to kick, chase, or at least, you know, follow up his own grubber kicks with his pure speed is at sometimes unbelievable. It's a tactic which Rassi will be doing his homework on for sure, but it's just, he's just so quick and so adept at dropping the ball on the foot and being able to regather it. It's a special skill. He's a try-scoring machine. And Penaud is not bad on the other wing as well. So very good wingers for France. Ramos will be doing the goal kicking and also chalk through a lot of run meters and whatnot in the Six Nations campaign too. Gros and Aldegheri are two of the more veteran props on the bench alongside the debutant Cramont and hooker. And then Taufifenua and Orado. There's a couple of big locks on the bench as well. Taufifenua is a particularly big lump, so the French obviously expecting a big battle up front. Gigoux, I guess, can be a bit more flexible in the terms of his positioning as well, but I guess loose forward will be his primary role. And then Luku and Duporter are the two back replacements. Duporter did start in that last game against the All Blacks as well down here in New Zealand. So there is a decent enough contingent from this French side who came down to New Zealand, which I feel is pleasing for the building of French depth. For the Boks, as I mentioned, they're without a few of their front rowers, but I think you'd still be reasonably happy with the way the forward pack is looking. Obviously, as I said, Sia getting his 100th cap, that is a massive, massive achievement for him. So big congratulations. It's a pretty rare one to get 100 caps for your country. Not many guys can do it. So yeah, it is. He'll be running out onto the field first, getting his moment, and rightly so, although all the off-the-field stuff shows he's trying not to make it about himself, which is the kind of character he is. Fenta comes in at loose head with the injury to Ox. Rassi did mention pre-match that although Boudehent Fenta has had a bit of a taste of international rugby, he's kind of doing a similar thing what he did with Zachary Porthen last week in terms of putting the less experienced guy up front and keeping the collective Bulls front row on the bench to bail them out, I guess, in case things become a bit of a pressure cooker situation, which makes sense. But I think Boudehent Fenta will be fine. He's alongside Malcolm Marx and Thomas Tutoy. Then Eben Etzebeth and Lut Diaka is that familiar box second row. Honestly, I was just talking about the Ntamack and like Feinberg-Mngomezulu being some of the most skilled guys in the world, but Etzebeth and Diaka up against Meafou and Flament is also very, very exciting stuff. I mean, people don't get as excited as much about big locks, but there's going to be some good line-out work. There's going to be some big crunching hits from these guys as well. And then the back row, Khaleesi, like I mentioned, Pieter-Steph is back. He's played a lot of rugby, so it was good to see him get rested last week, but he's back in. And then Jasper Wiese is in there at number 8. Reinach and Feinberg-Mngomezulu, as I said, it's going to be exciting. And Rassi did mention the reason he went with the likes of a Feinberg-Mngomezulu ahead of a more experienced guy like Andre Pollard was to give him another taste of like a crowd at this level, that extra bit of pressure. Like he started him in Wellington to put him under the pressure of a big game, and he's starting him here in France to put him under big game pressure. So he seems to be the kind of guy, Sasha, who relishes that kind of thing, and Corbis is well familiar with French rugby. So yeah, exciting stuff. Dealende and Creel continue on in the mid, and then Colby's back to his more familiar wing. Kirtley is still there, and Damian Willems is back at fullback. So it's a very similar Bok backline to the one that played back in 2023. Grobelaar, Steenekamp, and Lowe, that is your All Bulls front row replacements. Snyman is down to the bench for this one alongside Nokia. So they've got a couple of locks on the bench as well. Nokia likewise had a lot of rugby this year, so it was good to see him get a break last week, but he is back in on the bench here. Andre Esterhazen covers midfield, covers the flank, and Grant Williams and Mani Libok, your two specialist backs in that Bok bench. There's a fair bit of attacking from those two lads if they can come on and find some space against some tired legs. They did mention that Quokka Smith had a bit of a hand issue, which didn't rule him out, but it made Russie's selection a little bit easier in terms of picking the forwards this week. Some stats. It's kind of hard to read the French stats because, as I said, they do kind of pick two teams throughout the year. You can look at their Six Nations side, which scored a heap of tries. They had a lot of possession, like great line-out work, heaps of line breaks. The B team in New Zealand, for want of a better term, didn't have as good numbers as the Six Nations side, and that makes sense. This is largely back to the A team here, but as I said, with a sprinkling of some of the guys who tested themselves down in New Zealand. For South Africa, they dominate the possession, they dominate the territory. Like if you look at the Rugby Championship stats, first for run meters, first for tries, first for clean breaks. The one thing I feel like they would like to be improved on is the turnovers conceded. South Africa continues to have pretty high numbers in that regard. And like even within one game you saw in the Wellington game, the turnovers, drop balls and whatnot for South Africa in Wellington was horrendous in the first half. The first half was close. They stopped doing that in the second half and it was an absolute blowout. So when the Boks stopped dropping the ball, good things happen. So we will see. We will see what the handling is like in France, and obviously the French will have something to say about that as well, because it's not always your own actions that lose you the ball. Sometimes it is the opposition actions as well. Recent history between the sides is largely in South Africa's favour. It is 4-1 from the last 5 games, with just the one French win back in 2022. That was a game where there was a couple of red cards. Fingers crossed, no red cards in this one. But the average scores are pretty tight. It's 27-23 to South Africa. So they tend to have some pretty good ding-dong battles to these two sides. The last one was 29-28 back at that World Cup. 1-pointer. Previous French win was 30 points to 26. Previous one, 29-26 to South Africa. So some really tight battles. I'm hoping it is something similar this week. And the prediction's saying, yes, it will be. South Africa by 4 points according to the Rugby Forecast algorithm, and by 1 point according to the bookmakers. So very, very little predicted to be in this one. I suppose there's a slight advantage to South Africa in the fact that they have had game time recently, whereas this is the French first game of their November tests. But yeah, the French guys are at home with that Stade de France crowd behind them. So we will see. It is on 9:10 local time in France, which I think is an hour later for you guys in South Africa. So a slightly late kickoff for you guys in South Africa. Perfect time for us in New Zealand. I think it's 9:10 in the morning. So breakfast and some rugby. You guys let us know your thoughts on the game. Angus Gardner is the ref, the Australian. So fingers crossed we're not talking too much about him at the end of the game. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you want more rugby previews, reviews, stats, teams of the week, all that jazz. Take care, folks, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.